Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Backwards on Purpose, where I attempt to expose the horrendous record of a federal agency that's rated, get this, 432 out of 432. What a stellar record that happens to be. Those are the very same people who are responsible for over 150,000 people at 120 locations throughout the country. I hope you'll find this program to be a real eye-opener, even for those of us who have been there. So stay with me for the next half hour. I'm the one they used to call the old guy. Well, there's some eye-opening stuff that has come out about our special agency. The agency has huge responsibilities. It's the care and feeding of over 150,000 people and over 36,000 staff. Has an $8.7 billion annual budget and houses some of the most infamous criminals in the United States. It also houses, however, 50,000 people who are low and minimum security inmates, many of whom are eligible for early release due to the First Step Act. That's a 2018 law that can decrease a sentence term by up to a year and potentially increase the amount of time a prisoner spends in community confinement, or what you would know as a halfway house. Now, you think about that. You know, they claim to be so overwhelmingly understaffed, and yet they can release 50,000 people, reduce that population to 100,000. With current staffing levels, it would be more than enough staff, and yet they just don't do it. You know, staffing shortages are a challenge in any environment, whether it's in the public sector or private sector. But with the strong economy now and the enticement to benefit to work at home creates challenges to recruit new workers to replace the growing number of those who are leaving our favorite agency due to retirement and those leaving for other opportunities. However, one way to counter that shortage would be to have fewer prisoners. Imagine that! Gosh, who would have thought of that one? And that's something the First Step Act was supposed to remedy. However, in the prison population is now higher than it was prior to the beginning of 2022, just before COVID-19 began. And now comes along Director Colette Peters, the brand new, or about a year on the job, reformer, and she's rolling out the agency's framework for the future. Okay, an ambitious and obese plan, encompassing 7 goals and over 180 unique initiatives. She's set to redefine the Bureau's operations. According to a press release, she gushed the executive team consisting of regional directors, assistant directors, and key figures within the director's office, all of whom worked to get this agency where it is. Remember, 432 out of 432. They're going to oversee these initiatives. You really think they want to reform an agency that they worked so hard to screw up? Says their unwavering commitment is geared towards propelling the agency forward, fostering a humane and secure environment, and preparing individuals for successful reentry into communities. The agency told employees in a video message that Peters had introduced this and engaged and empowered the agency's dedicated workforce with details about those 7 goals. Jeez. Come on, Miss Peters. Please empower your dedicated people to spare us the bureaucratic happy talk. And while we're at it, 7 goals, really? 180 unique initiatives? Oh my goodness. You know, let's keep it simple. I got a suggestion for you, and I'm just, some bumpkin sitting here talking about it. But I think the first thing you need to do is hire the right people. Can you imagine that? Hire the right people. And that starts with a marketing campaign that's designed to attract people looking for a good career, not just a job, with great pay and excellent benefits. Sound about right? Second, they need to use extensive mental health testing and training, and then ongoing mental health testing and training to make sure they get the right people. Excuse me, and to prevent a repeat of what's called Zimbardo's famous Stanford prison experiment from the early 70s, which took students, made some corrections officers, some prisoners, and with the task of seeing what happens. Well, it was supposed to last 3 weeks. It lasted 6 days before they were at each other's throats. You think there's a problem there if you don't hire the right people and make sure that those people are in the right frame of mind to continue doing what they're doing? You know, the excuse me, the agency is still at a distinct disadvantage due to proximity of its facilities to population centers. A lot of these places are out in the middle of nowhere with a very small labor base. And yet they can't understand why they can't attract people. You know, you put a facility with 13, 14, 1,500 people in a town with 25,000 people that does have some major industry, and then you sit there and wonder why you can't attract anybody to work there. Well, there's some pretty good jobs outside. That's why you need to tout that these are good jobs with good pay, good benefits, and that when you get the right people in those jobs who are looking at it as maybe something they hadn't thought about before, but then they're again come around and say, you know, this might not be a bad career. It's good pay, good bennies. You know, the work's not extremely difficult, and as long as I can keep my head in the game, it might be a good deal. So as you're putting together your framework for the future, you might want to start with the easiest first step. Of course, the other step would be to get rid of the people who got it there in the first place. You know, these people have failed to address even the most basic of its problems, which starts with staff and facilities. And then they exacerbate the problem by failing to consider the release of nearly 50,000 people. You know, I can remember sitting there and asking one of the team members, you know, am I getting my First Step credits? This is what we're talking about, First Step Act. Am I getting, which gives you an additional for low and low minimum security people, you know, who are eligible for it. You know, that's an extra 5 days of good time a month. And I was told then, well, I don't know, you know, I don't have any information on it. I don't have any updates. I don't have any guidance on this. You know, it's been around, or had been around for 4 years at the time. You don't have any information. You don't have any updates on it. You don't think that the boss is trying to avoid the issue. You know, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this out. I truly believe that the government can make an easy solution complex. I mean, even Einstein would not have had trouble figuring this out. It's the old KISS rule that they fail to, you know, keep it simple, stupid, but instead they use a snafu rule, which is one that comes back from World War II. I mean, these people can screw up anything. Director Peters was given a mandate by Congress to improve the agency, but many of those needed improvements have been problems for years and years and years. The Office of the Inspector General and Government Accountability Office have both authored scathing reports on the Bureau. And Peters, who appeared in 60 Minutes early this month, understands the BOP cannot continue to operate efficiently and in some cases inhumanely as it has for decades. And you're not going to fix it overnight unless you get a group of the right people. You know, many people believe that Director Peters is, quote unquote, the agent of change and needed to overhaul the Bureau, which has been plagued by employee misconduct, increases in health care, understaffing, and infrastructure decay. The BOP has also had difficulty implementing the First Step Act, which is critically important, and delays in implementation have been caused by early misinterpretation of law, computer glitches, a shortage of halfway house capacity, which is crap, and just plain stonewalling, which is more closely related to the problem. The Justice Department, who's in charge of all this, who we've seen in the news repeatedly, operates an inconsistent agency. It operates short-staffed in facilities with billions of dollars of repair backlogs. The yet-to-be-realized version has a glowing future under Director Peters' new plan for rebuilding agency, but I have hastened to say she'll never get there. One of the things they envision is an enthusiastic, properly paid workforce applying the most contemporary and humane practices to adults in custody. That's the new term for inmate or prisoner. The other BOP has shoddy procedures that sparks a management alert from the GOJ Inspector General. The IG report says correctional officers fail to make mandatory inspection rounds of a special housing unit, any unit for that matter. Bad behavior, dangerous inmates get moved to blandly named SHU, which is Special Housing Unit, solitary confinement, and they dwell separated from the rest of the prison population. Corrections officers say that leads to inmate suicides. Well, guys, it's do your job. And if you had the right people doing that job, I dare say it would cut down significantly on the problems. And also, Director Peters acknowledged that the buildings are in disrepair, noting that Congress has upped the level of maintenance and repair funding from $100 million to $180 million, but the backlog is about $3 billion. Well, why don't you ask for enough money in your budget to get things done? Things like replacing roofs that leak, full of black mold. That's not a good environment. That's toxic. That's a toxic environment. And that's a horrific situation. So one of the things, the strategic framework calls for many steps, including improved mental health services. Well, duh, can you imagine that? Optimized use of restrictive housing. I mean, I was scheduled for a test outside and at an outside medical facility, and they wanted me to put me in the SHU overnight because I had to go out the next morning for a test. Now, that is the most ridiculous, stupid thing I have ever heard of, to put me in the SHU because I got an outside medical test the next morning. I mean, absolutely unbelievable. They also need an external review by the National Institute of Justice, which is part of the Justice Department, to review what's going on. As I said before, they need better recruitment. They need better recruits. They need better training. They need mental health observations, analysis, and they need to stay on top of that to make sure that these guys don't get nuts. And they also need a significant improvement in mental health counseling and testing for the residents. But a January 5th report from the General Accounting Office chastised the agency for implementing fewer than half of prior GAO recommendations on the use of restrictive housing. The report blamed the BOP for failing to assign responsibility for implementing these recommendations to the appropriate officials. You see, that's the whole thing as you go through this thing, is that you've got a bureaucracy built in there that has no incentive to move the ball forward and to get things done. On February 15th, the Office of the Inspector General, as opposed to the General Accounting Office, found that a combination of recurring policy violations and operational failures, including deficiencies in inmate assessments and mental health care level assignments, were holding inmates at risk for suicides in single cells, lack of urgency in responding to medical emergencies, and poor after-the-fact record keeping, contributing not only to inmate suicides but to incredibly poor mental health and medical facilities. It's Director Peters called the IG's findings troubled. Troubled? Are you kidding me? Troubled? Absolutely outrageous. And she agreed with all the report's recommendations, though she stressed that misconduct cited was one of the very small percentages of approximately 35,000 employees who continue to strive for correctional excellence every day. That is a bunch of absolute crap. You've got, of all the corrections officers I met, only two actually cared about what happened. The rest of them could have cared less because you know what? It was a job. And I think half these guys were bullied or picked on as kids because they did not miss an opportunity to exercise their authority over people who couldn't do a darn thing about it. It's a shame. I had this one little guy that covering a vacation in the chow hall that was going to tell people how it was. So his big thing is that he would give sweetener. He'd give you 2 little packs of sweetener for your cereal or for your coffee that you made back in your cubicle. But that's what he was going to do. He was, you can only have 2 sweeteners. You can only have 1 carton of milk, even though they're throwing milk out on a regular basis. You can only have 1 carton of milk. Boy, he was going to show us. He was going to tell us what's going on. So it was a horrible situation. And she finds the Inspector General's and the GAO's report troubling. My goodness, I would be absolutely appalled and outraged by that. Federal prisoners know all too well the federal government is not your friend. Never has been, never is, never will be. The federal bureaucracy at this agency has been voted the least effective part of the government, has developed into an instrument of elitist control. Federal prisoners, as translated into the Bureau and the DOJ, is blocking clear congressional legislation to shorten sentences and provide well-defined pathways to reduce sentences. The expected SCOTUS decisions coming in about Chevron may change all that in the coming future because they're going to limit an administrative agency's ability to just make up rules, or over make rules that are well beyond the scope of their authority. I'm waiting for that one. It comes down to in my particular case, among other things, not getting my first step credits because I was told that I would have to wait a year to start receiving those credits, which is absolutely, totally, 100% false. Those credits are supposed to start accumulating the day you walk in that door. Doesn't make any difference if you're in the custody of the U.S. Marshal or you self-surrender and walk in the front door. They're supposed to start accumulating that day. That costs me 60 days of additional good time. It may not seem a lot to other people, but when you're in an in-custody situation or you're in a situation where you're under their control, 60 days is a long time, and we just get it. And I didn't get it because of incompetence. Nobody told them how we're supposed to apply it. That's just garbage. Absolute garbage. The new director, has certainly piled on a frequent flyer miles visiting prison facilities where they're all scrubbed up and spiffed up and fixed up and to impress her. She's on the clock, man, as Congress shows signs of tiring at the blizzard of complaints from prisoners who do write guys like Dick Durbin and others on the House Judiciary Committee. people are documenting the things that go on in these places. Poorly trained, often disinterested prison workers. Oh, you think? All of whom have failed to deliver on what Congress has legislated. Cost taxpayers billions and billions of dollars to screw this thing up. And they've got it so screwed up now that it's going to be, this 7 initiatives and 180 separate steps. Lady, I'm telling you, you got to get rid of what was there and put this thing on a whole new course. You got to hire the right people. You got to make sure they're mentally stable, mentally able to do this job. You have to do that, because if you put the wrong folks in there, they're just, it's going to make it worse. We're going to be back to that Zambrano thing from the early 70s, and it's going to be a difficult job to put out there that, these are good jobs. These are good jobs for people. We're not requiring somebody to be a mental genius, but we're also should require someone to be mentally stable and to make sure that they're assessed on an ongoing basis, to make sure that they're in the right frame of mind to continue doing this, so that they don't abuse people and sit there and actually could care less. And I think Congress has to be in a position to force Director Peters to actually take notice, figure this out. This is the KISS principle, ma'am. Keep it simple, It's hire the right people. Put out an advertising campaign that we're looking for corrections officer, but we're looking for the right ones. Make this an elite position, that you're getting the right folks in there, and that the buildings are being maintained. I mean, it's the easiest thing in the world. You can pay inmates to put a new roof on. I mean, the labor base is there. Pay them more than 13 cents an hour, or if you're lucky, maybe $1 an hour to work in Unicor. Seriously. 13 cents and the better jobs were $1. Have them re-roof it. Have them do the repairs. Have them clean up the black mold. And if they don't, there's no the prisoners to do that. Make sure you can get them trained. Call somebody from the junior college. Have them come out, train people on how to remove mold and mildew and treat things so that it doesn't come back. Put new roofs on, put new plumbing in. Do the things necessary. You can do that on a budget, but, ma'am, you got to ask for the right amount of money to do it. And making people sick, and this includes staff too. The staff has to walk through there and breathe that air. The staff is exposed to it. Get the right people, get the right guys doing the repairs, and you can make this turnaround pretty quick, but you also have to make an understanding with the people that are in your inner circle that this has to be done. It has to be done now. You were part of the problem. Now you need to be part of the solution. If you can't be part of the solution, then you got to go. And I don't think anybody wants to lose a good-paying federal job. The Justice Department Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, I think most people have heard that name before, said his office has begun investigating the document retention policies surrounding logs and at the special housing units, at medical facilities, mental health situations, at prisons around the country. I think the thing he needs to do, or someone from his office needs to do, they just need to show up unannounced at some of these places and see what really goes on, see what really happens. Take that clown that was in the day shift and, who thought he was the master of the universe, knock him down a couple of pegs. I mean, who the hell does he think he is? These old guys, non-violent, low-risk people, and he's just going to come in there and act like King Kong and Godzilla, and he's going to rule the roost. And that's just not right. There are people like him. There's guys that enjoyed looking at people sitting on the toilet? Seriously. This is no, I mean, folks, you can't make this stuff up. This isn't just conjecture. I mean, this stuff really goes on. You know, it's serious stuff. And then the medical staffing with people who had licensing problems or unlicensed, or can't get a job anywhere else, or have been other places that can't continue in those jobs. That's just amazing. That's just awful stuff, and it's easy to fix. Truly, it's easy to fix. Like I said, you're either part of the problem or you're part of the solution. If you're part of the solution, I'm sorry, but it's goodbye. I know the union for the corrections officers is extremely strong, but folks, you're not going to get this fixed. You're not going to get this fixed until A, you get the right people, B, you start implementing the things that can get low-risk prisoners back in the street, back in the halfway houses. And yes, Ms. Peters, it is your job. It is mandatory to make sure that there's enough room at those halfway houses. You can't ignore the situation. So, it's a laundry list of things that need to be done. The solutions are not easy, but they're not difficult. But it all starts with attracting the right people, making sure that they're physically and mentally able to handle this thing, making sure that their ongoing mental health assessments, to make sure that they're not falling in a trap of thinking that they're King Kong in this environment, or you're a 5'2" and you got to make sure everybody understands that you're the most important person there. It's bad enough without these people making the situation worse. And yes, there's a staffing shortage, but the staffing shortage could be alleviated by letting the prisoners that are eligible for First Step Back go. If you can strip out 50,000 people, you can get this thing back into a manageable number, and then your staffing's correct. Then you just make sure you've got the right staffing. And you've got to get these buildings fixed. So, according to Eric Ortiz, staffing shortages and deficient training leave First Step Act floundering. Federal employees are saying, well, you're part of the problem. You're not part of the solution. And that's just a ridiculous situation. So I'm going to start wrapping this thing up. I've ranted long enough here. I think, unless you've been there, you sit there and listen to me talk about this stuff, and it's like, he can't be right. Oh, yes, I am. Been there, done that. So, and a lot of people have been there, done that. They've been deprived medical treatment, mental health care. They've killed people. There's suicides. It's got to change. And nothing's going to change until those of us who have been there and seen it speak out about it, because those who are still there have absolutely no voice. They can't. They can't talk about it. They can talk about it in private, but you can't do anything if you're talking to your family at home, either on the phone or in an email, because they look at that stuff, and if they even suspect they don't like what you're saying, you're toast. You're in the shoe. And we have to be that voice, those of us who are out here. After all the mental and physical abuse that we all suffered at the hands of prison officials, let's remember to treat each other, our families and friends, with what I call a little CPR. That's be considerate, be polite, and be respectful. It's taken me a long time to figure that out. They dehumanize you. It's browbeat you, and you become almost dead inside. I'm looking for another word and I'm not finding it here. So give that a whirl. just be considerate, be polite, and be respectful. I must thank WBGU 88.1 FM for allowing me to rant and rave for half an hour every other week and to express my views. If you have a question or comment, and I hope you do, please feel free to contact me at backwards@myyahoo.com. That's backwards@myyahoo.com. You can also find me on YouTube at Backwards on Purpose, or you can email me for a link. And if you're interested in sponsoring my broadcast or my podcast, hey, shoot me an email. You know, this is a little expensive for me to keep doing this, and I want to keep doing it. So give me a hand here if you can, and let me know whether you like the show or don't, or think I'm full of it or whatever. But thanks to those of you who are listening to me, and I'll see you in 2 weeks on my regular scheduled time at 1:15 on Thursday.